Welcome back everyone, it's Charlie. This is going to be my new Spider-Man and Venom video. Marvel and Sony just confirmed some details on a new Spider-Man Venom 2 crossover character and crossovers that go beyond that, and because the Venom 2 producers are talking about doing even more versions of the symbiotes beyond Venom and Carnage in the comics, we'll break down the most powerful versions of the symbiote and explain the progression of symbiotes beyond Venom and Carnage, which ones came after Carnage. So if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the Easter egg videos. We'll do a new Amazon giveaway. All you have to do to enter is be a subscriber and let me know which other symbiotes do you want them to do in the movies. So starting with number 5, if you didn't see it recently, Marvel and Sony were talking about the future of the Spider-Man and Venom characters through Spider-Man 3 and Venom 2. Because of the virus delays, both movies are coming out next year. Venom 2 is coming out in June, and then Spider-Man 3 is coming out in November, so they're way closer together than they were before. The Morbius movie, which is still a Spider-Man Venom spin-off, is coming out before Venom 2 as well. As much as Tom Holland's Spider-Man himself is the main crossover character, the other biggest one that you've all probably theorized or learned about is actually Jonah Jameson himself from thedailybugle.net. We've already seen enough Morbius trailer Easter eggs to know that Jonah Jameson is appearing in that movie in some way. We even got some details about what that will look like. And recently, J.K. Simmons himself did an interview confirming what's going on with his new contract that he signed with Marvel and Sony for the Spider-Man movies. He said it was for multiple films, and he's got a couple more guaranteed appearances on it as of the end of Spider-Man Far From Home. So 4, he said the contract was technically with Sony, but that it also covered the MCU Marvel Spider-Man movies, not other MCU movies, just the Spider-Man movies, both Marvel and Sony, which includes all the Venom stuff, the Morbius, any other Spider-Man spin-offs that Sony wants to do. So this just confirms more Jonah Jameson for Venom 2 and Spider-Man 3. The way he spoke about his contract is that they could do anything they wanted to with his character in those upcoming movies. It wasn't that he was supposed to get a ton of scenes or be a huge part of the story, but based on what we know about the Morbius movie, the way they're using him in that is very similar to the way they used him in Spider-Man Far From Home, and it's sort of a template for the other movies as well. We'll call it the Spider-Man PS4 method of Jonah Jameson. It feels like everyone on the planet played that video game at some point, but if you didn't for some reason, during the game they had broadcasts of JJ yelling about how terrible Spider-Man was while you were web-slinging around New York City completing missions.
This is Just the Facts with Jonah Jameson, where listeners like you discuss the issues affecting our city with Pulitzer Prize-winning two-time Pulitzer Prize-winning former publisher of the Daily Bugle. Hey, plug the book. And as always, if you order Mr. Jameson's book, Spider-Man, Threat or Menace, within 24 hours of our broadcast, you'll get an autographed copy at no extra charge.
No personalizations, don't ask, not gonna get it.
Welcome to Just the Facts with Jonah Jameson, alerting you to the threats you don't even know about.
Like, you see all these bus ads asking about Spider-Man. Where's Spider-Man? What's going on? People calling him a murderer with graffiti on the wall as Morbius is walking by. So Spider-Man and Daily Bugle, Jonah Jameson stuff all over the place. So I would just expect the same treatment for Jonah Jameson in the Morbius movie, in Venom 2, and in Spider-Man 3. And because, of course, there's going to be more Spider-Man solo movies, a big Spider-Man Venom crossover movie, a Sinister Six movie that Sony has been teasing for a while now, it's pretty safe to assume that they're going to try and get J.K. Simmons to come back for more little cameos in some or most of those movies too, especially the biggest ones. He's kind of become the Nick Fury-style character of the larger Spider-Man Spider-Verse and Venomverse movies between Marvel and Sony, the one guy that connects all the movies outside of the hero character Peter Parker Spider-Man. But number 3, because the Venom and Spider-Man people are talking about doing more symbiotes, the big symbiotes, way beyond Venom and Carnage, what are the next ones they would do if they're going through the comics in chronological order? What came after Carnage, and then after that, what are the most powerful versions of the symbiote?
One of, I think, our great hopes for future films is other articulations of Venom.
So after Carnage, we're talking about the Toxin symbiote. Toxin is actually the spawn of the Carnage symbiote the same way that Venom spawned Carnage. So Toxin is kind of like Venom's grandson, but he bonded with a police officer named Patrick Mulligan and became a hero. He was actually one of the first symbiotes that Spider-Man considered an ally, becoming a bit of a mentee to Spider-Man. Then after the Toxin symbiote, there was the Anti-Venom symbiote. And a lot of people wondering if they're going to do Anti-Venom at some point. He was a hybrid symbiote that was created accidentally in Eddie Brock when the codexes of the Venom symbiote combined with Eddie Brock's body in mystical energies from Mr. Negative. For the most part, it has crazy healing abilities, and as the name implies, anti-venom, it has a lot of anti-symbiote powers for fighting other symbiotes. What's probably going to happen after they do Venom and Carnage fighting each other during the Venom 2 movie is that they'll go for their big Spider-Man Venom crossover in a separate movie. Then after the big Spider-Man Venom team-up movie, they go back to the Venom solo movies. That's when they would probably try to do another iteration of the Venom symbiote, like doing the Toxin character or the Anti-Venom character. You have to consider that they're introducing a ton of other spin-off characters like the Morbius character, so eventually Sony is going to try and cross over all of its crossover characters, like you have the Black Cat movie that they're talking about doing, the Silver and Black movie with Silver Sable. That'll all be going on while they're also trying to introduce other iterations of the Venom symbiote, so obviously it's going to take a while to get through all the different Venom symbiotes. Number 2, here's where we get to the S-tier symbiotes, talking about Venom tier list, starting with Null, the god of the symbiotes. This is a relatively recent addition to the canon too. Null was the god who existed in the void before the Big Bang of the Marvel Universe. After the most recent version of the universe came into existence, Eternity creates the Celestials. You kind of know how galactic history plays out. The Celestials start gardening the universe, the rise of humanity, the modern Marvel Universe, and all the characters that we know in present day. But right after the Big Bang, the Celestials are created. Null despises the universe itself because it's sort of this invasion on his void, his nothingness. So he wants to return the universe to his nothingness. He attacks the Celestials with a piece of himself that he uses to create a sword, the Necro Sword, aka the Primal Symbiote, also called the All Black, that was wielded by Gore the God Butcher in the Thor comics. He uses that to cut the head off of one of the Celestials. Supposedly that Celestial was Nowhere from the Guardians of the Galaxy movie. Like, Nowhere isn't the name of the Celestial, that's just the place that they call it, and it's the head of a dead Celestial from the beginning of the universe. Then Null, the god of the symbiotes, goes on to create the actual symbiotes, the Clintar race itself. So the symbiotes are basically pieces of him. Then even though there are other uber-powered-up versions of Carnage, like Carnage wielding the Primal Symbiote and Eddie Brock's new son that they just introduced in the comics, who's a human symbiote hybrid that can actually forcibly control other symbiotes against their will. There was even a Venomized version of the Hulk, which was pretty cool to look at. I don't know that they would ever get to Null in the movies. That would actually be a really cool story. That would be like their version of Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame. But I'm kind of hoping that instead of that, they actually make a beeline for live-action Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, just because it feels like it's a little bit more believable that they could pull that off than a big Null universe-spanning story. Plus, if they do live-action Spider-Verse, it's a really good excuse to bring back Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man and Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man on screen with Tom Holland's Spider-Man. Number 1, the actual most powerful version of the symbiote is now Cosmic Venom from Venom the End. This is the most crazy OP version of Venom that you've ever heard of before. This is a version of Venom that over time learned how to go full Ego the Living Planet, terraforming the entire universe, venomizing everything, even terraforming entire planets with symbiotes. It gains several god-level powers and time travel powers through symbiosis, and eventually is able to completely reboot the entire Marvel universe because it has a template for every living thing that ever existed. So it effectively creates a backup for all of existence across space and time, and then just completely recreates it. There is probably no way they would ever do something that big in the live-action movies with the Venom character, but it would make a really, really badass Marvel What If episode if they ever wanted to animate it. The other really good news recently that you probably saw in real life is that most every movie, including the Marvel movies, the Sony movies, everything is going back into production around mid-July. That's when everything is going to start filming again. So as much as we've kind of been waiting for a lot of new content to drop, the second half of the year is going to have a lot more stuff coming, especially the big Marvel Disney Plus series. I just did a video about all the Marvel Disney Plus series, so I'll link that at the end of this. But we have Mandalorian Season 2, we have the Marvel WandaVision series, we have Avengers, Falcon and Winter Soldier. All that stuff is going to be coming up the second half of the year. So what'll happen is we get more details as they start filming again and dropping teasers and trailers. Of course, I'll do videos for all that stuff, but leave all your big video requests and big questions in the comments below. Everyone, click here for my new Venom 2 trailer video and Easter eggs, and click here for my new WandaVision trailer and update on all the Marvel Disney Plus series. Thank you so much for watching. Everyone stay safe. I'll see you guys tonight.